Hey everyone, welcome back to Tomorrow's America. My name is Richard Donahue. I'm here with my co-host William Donahue. Today, we're not looking towards tomorrow, we are looking from the past. 2025, the year is done. We are into 2026. Will, what is one event in 2025 that sticks out to you?
I would say probably the Charlie Kirk assassination would be
Mhm.
the biggest thing for me from this year. Honestly, for the past 10 years, that's a huge thing that happened.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the Charlie Kirk assassination has widely been regarded as one of the biggest culture shifters in United States. Charlie Kirk was one of the biggest podcasters, biggest political influences, especially for the young people, which is the people that are radicalized at this moment in time. It was probably the most gruesome thing I've ever seen in my life, and for it to be done live, that's disgusting. I feel like honestly, the only thing that really rivals it, in American history, at least from like decently recent history, would be probably the JFK assassination. Obviously, he was the president, but public assassinations like that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So today, I was talking to Will yesterday, and we were talking about what we want to talk about on episode 4. Which, welcome back to the channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we want to just go and recap 2025. So much has happened. So much political things have happened. The news cycle has shortened a lot. You know, when Biden was in president, or when Biden was during his presidency, he didn't really talk to the media, as we all know. He was stumbling over his words, had teleprompters, and it was kind of like he was hiding from the media. Where Trump, he is the content president. This guy loves the live stream. He live streams more than most people that live stream for their job. He loves to do public appearances. Everything is golden age, the golden year, and that's just been the year. It's all on face value, so good. But when you really dig into it, is it really? So, I just wanted to start
Yeah.
with January. January was the first month of the year. We had Trump's inauguration. This is where I'd say American spirit was at its highest, probably other than 4th of July. I mean, depending on what you say. But where were you when you were watching that inauguration? Because I was at my friend's house. We were all gathered at the TV. We were like super hyped up. We all fell for the propaganda. Where were you at?
Me, I actually was on the phone with our Uncle Mike,
Mm,
and I was pacing back and forth because for me, after Trump had his assassination attempt, I, started really getting into paying attention, to what was going on because had Trump been assassinated, that would have been one of the biggest, assassinations since JFK and like you said about Charlie Kirk, it would have been a culture shift. So got really into it because for all of 2024 leading up to 2025, Trump's messaging was great. And then they attempted to assassinate him. And then I started seeing weird stuff go on with him. And, right when he got inaugurated, I was on the phone with my Uncle Mike and I was talking to him and I was saying, I hope that Trump actually does all the things that he says he's going to do because, the first term, he had a bunch of half measures. He said he was going to lock up Hillary and drain the swamp and all that stuff, and we really didn't see it. But we were also hoping he would get in for a second term and be able to do it. So he had a 4-year gap between his two terms, and I was hoping that he surrounded himself with good people and that he actually did the things that he said he was going to do leading up to 2025. So I was pretty doubtful, and I kind of already was paying attention, and I think we're going to get into some of that.
yeah.
But it was where I was January 2025.
Mm. See, that's where we differ. Um, and I've said this on episode 1. I'm freshly 18 years old. I'm been developing my views and my viewpoint over the last year, and I'm trying to educate myself as much as possible. But at this point, I am freshly new to politics. I love Trump, obviously, because everything he stood for and everything he said. He really knows how to bait you into voting for him. Obviously, as he said, Republicans are dumb. But I was very into the propaganda. I really did like Donald Trump. I thought that we were gonna have 4 years of excellence. I thought gas prices were going to shoot down to the 260 range. I thought we were going to end the Russia-Ukraine war and start doing trade deals with Russia and Ukraine, for that matter. And I thought that overall the world was going to calm down. But fast forward, 12 months, and we're about to be into two wars, probably led by neoconservatives. If you actually want to dive into that, which neoconservatives, I thought we left that in 2008 when we elected, Obama, but I guess not. His advisors are neocons, whatever. Um, Obviously, something's going on with his advisors, because what we're going to talk about later on, around a month before Israel Iran, he started to switch up. But let's keep going into January. What I have right here is tons of executive orders. He was pumping out executive orders. Now, this is very uncommon when you talk about American history, but since I guess 2016, a lot in 2020, Joe Biden had so many executive orders, and let's be honest, half of them probably weren't him with his auto pen scam. And
Yeah.
Trump broke that record by far. So executive orders, I loved it. All the executive orders that they were fixing the country. He came out guns a blazing. You know what I mean? So I mean that's my point of view. I really did like it. But what were your initial thoughts when he was coming out with all these orders?
So I had that conversation with my Uncle Mike about 4 days after he got in. I saw him day one skip all the big celebrations and all the whatever they put on, like a parade and all different things to celebrate. And I saw him sitting at these events but signing executive orders and going to work. So I said, hey, maybe I'm wrong. I was like, I actually called my Uncle Mike again and said, Uncle Mike, I think I was wrong. He's going full speed. And so what happened was, Trump's whole first term was erased by Biden's executive orders. So Trump had to erase Biden's whole term, his whole 4 years, and then re-implement his first 4 years and add to it. So it was like this massive hit of pro-America, good for the country, all these decisions that happened. And I was really excited. I was, happy to see that he brought in Elon Musk and they were doing so much good and finding fraud and we didn't really get the Russia-Ukraine conflict ended in 24 hours like Trump said was going to happen. But I was still optimistic because of the rapid fire just win, 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 win. I was super excited. I actually thought for a minute that my prediction might have been wrong. And then I think things changed over time, but that will be later in the year.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, that's just going to happen. This is politics. Obviously, he has to play into his donors, but that's not what the people want, Also in January, and I have this in quotations, increased ICE operations. We increased the ICE operations a lot. I just looked up the statistic. In 2025, we've deported just under 600,000. So 600,000, you think that's a lot of people. But when you think about Obama doing 5 million that really isn't a lot of people, especially with Joe Biden allowing anywhere from 10 to 40 million illegal immigrants into our country. 60,000 is really not going to do anything. And if we only have 4 years under a, Republican president, as they say, because obviously the Democrats aren't going to do deportations. They've completely strayed away from it, which honestly doesn't make sense to me when you look at their policies that they've had. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, even Joe Biden, they were very against what Joe Biden did in 2020, but for some reason, and maybe it's because Joe Biden was just a puppet, obviously, with the auto pen scam, you see that. What happened? Let's just allow minimum 10 million people into this country. Why? Why? That it's never happened ever in the history of the world. 10 million people coming into this, like this country in a 4 year time span. Actually, I'd say 3 years, because they saw how bad their poll numbers were and they started to actually increase border security in 2024. That's what they actually started to do. They actually reverted more towards Trump's policies just because of how bad they were, how bad they saw they were so unpopular. Their poll numbers were so bad that they actually reverted closer to the election. Obviously, that's how things work. Closer to the election, things happen like that. But, that was January. Very, very packed. Very packed. In February, nationwide protests against Trump. The Democrats were very mad. I believe this was before the No Kings protests, which were obviously stupid. Obviously, he's not a king, but whatever. It's just a name. It's just a name for a protest. They're protesting Trump because they're saying that he's a fascist. Everyone's open to having their own opinion. I understand that, but clearly not a fascist. If you said a neocon, maybe, but yeah, nationwide protests, and they were even in our backyard. Buffalo. They were downtown Buffalo. There was a big protest. Did you see anything on that? I'm sure you know more about that than me. These protests that were happening. Where was it? The square?
Yeah, it was mainly just downtown, and it actually was a lot smaller than I had anticipated. At the time, I sent out text messages to everyone that I know and said, don't go out to the cities, don't be in public. This protest, this No Kings rally is going to be the big one, I thought, because I'm not sure, who knows about the John Podesta plan and what John Podesta. He said that if Trump got back in office, they would spark massive protests, and basically Trump, basically they would spark massive protests to force Trump to put the militaries in the cities, and then basically just hope that organically something bad would happen where they could say that Trump, something bad would happen where the military would have to use force. And luckily, the military kept their restraint and actually did a very professional job. But it was definitely a time when I was thinking, like, okay, if there was to be a false flag or even one Trump supporter out of line, this is their opportunity to seize, to try and undermine Trump's presidency. So I was very nervous about that. And it didn't really make much sense, the whole No Kings thing, just in general. And I don't think that it made sense to the leftists either, because not many of them really went along with it.
No. I mean, it didn't really make sense. In practice, no kings, but we're a democracy.
Right.
It doesn't really make sense, but I do think that was more of just a name. But the problem is when the general public believes it, and they believe that he wants to go for a third term, and they don't see that he's joking. Obviously, the third term is a joke. He's going to be older than Joe Biden was by the end of his second term. You know what I mean? So obviously the third term was joke. I bought into that. I liked it. I liked the joking aspect of it. But you know, not everyone sees that. Another
That's
thing that happened in February that I wanted to touch up on, he did an executive order, and this is one of the positives that out of his presidency I really do like. He stopped DEI for military and federal agencies, which thank you. This makes the most sense to me. You know, when it comes to our military and it comes to our federal agencies, obviously we should have the best of the best. Like, and from my point of view, I don't care if you're white, black, Latino. I don't care if you're anything. You know, woman, man. It doesn't matter to me. If you're the best at what you do, you should be at the highest level. You know, it doesn't matter if you are a male or a female or the color of your skin. I feel like if you are the best at what you do, you should be at the highest level. So it doesn't matter if the DEI is gone. You know what I mean? Because we should have the best of the best anyways. We shouldn't just have someone in because they are, you know, because of the color of their skin. If anything, I feel like that's racist. I feel like it's racist just to put them in that position because of the color of their skin. We shouldn't even be looking at that or factoring that in, especially when it comes to government agencies and the military, because this is, you know, the foundation of our country.
right. Yeah, definitely DEI is definitely racist. We've had almost 80 years since the civil rights movement. Affirmative action was the beginning of this, where you know they would try and hire certain percentages of certain demographics, and people are already mad about it. But DEI goes a step further, where they actually have quotas and hiring quotas, and you could see it with like Boeing airplanes and different companies that or fire what's it called during the Los Angeles wildfires. You know, they
Oh
had
yeah.
they had hired this woman to be the police chief, and she would say things like, well, if you're a 200-pound man and I go in to save you and I can't lift you, then you shouldn't have been there, which doesn't make sense. What you want in a firefighter is you want a strong man who could run in and put a big guy over his shoulder, or a baby or whatever needs to be rescued. The purpose of a firefighter is to save people, but you have these DEI hires who are not qualified for the job, but put into a position because of their sexual preference or their skin color, or you know things like that.
Yeah.
If DEI in practice, and I know this is kind of like a overused example, but the NBA, if you put DEI into the NBA and you said, hey, you have to hire the exact demographic, well, then 13% of the NBA would be African Americans, and there'd be some Asians, and then it'd be mostly a white thing, but it's not, because of merit and because they go by who's the best, which just so happens to be that African Americans are the best basketball players and they end up in the league, and that's just where the cards fall. You know, it would be seen as racist if we said, well, we want 70% of the NBA to be white people, but so people could see that, but people can't seem to understand it when it comes to corporate positions, or corporate executives, or military leaders. Getting rid of DEI was definitely a step in the right direction for anyone who believes in civil rights
Yeah. You know,
and equality.
equality for sure. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest problems is in the country today is people actually getting given stuff for free for no reason. You know, I think that that's a big problem. Able-bodied workers is the biggest thing for me. H-1B visas are huge for me in my belief system. Trump, and this is jumping around a little bit, but a couple months ago said that American workers are dumb and we need H-1B visas. Say you're sold out without saying you're sold out, dude. Americans are dumb. Americans are dumb. Americans are the best in the world, okay? You're the American president, the United States of America, the number one country in the world in so many facets and aspects. The
Yeah.
freest country, the free world, the new world. And you're going to say that Americans are dumb. That makes no sense to me. It from that standpoint that he's saying that, it doesn't make any sense. So what I'm hearing is someone told you that you need to have H-1B visas. Oh, well, we can't deport these people because they're farmers and who's going to pick the crops. Well, let me tell you this. Farmers, you're paying them $13 an hour. Well, pay 25 and I guarantee you'll have some people on your farm. Pay a reasonable wage. American made, you know what I mean? That was our whole thing going into the 2024 election. American made, American made. And that's what you see with the tariffs, the tariffs on the cars, It's to
Think
get
about that.
that manufacturing back in the United States. Now,
Think about
why did we stop manufacturing? Because of the climate hoax, okay?
that.
So right now the West is 7% of the climate, like of the the carbon dioxide that is getting released into the atmosphere. China's 30%. Now, do you think they care what we're doing? Does that help the earth that much that they're 30% and Bangladesh and Vietnam and all of them just destroying, the atmosphere? Does that matter? No, it doesn't, because what we're doing isn't canceling out what they're doing, and we're just making them more powerful. We're the consumers, they're the producers. We used to be both. Like, even
Right.
100 years ago, we were the producer and we were the consumer. So,
China China
sorry.
is building new coal power plants every week.
Mhm.
China is a massive polluter, and the big difference is that we could have clean coal power plants. There's a lot of clean coal, especially in the area that me and you live,
Yeah.
the upper northeastern part of the United States. There's a lot of clean coal. Now, China has a lot of dirty coal, and they're building new coal power plants. But when they build their power plants, they don't have all the regulations that we have here, where we have scrubbers on the top of the stacks to take the soot out of the thing. They just blast it up into the air. But the main reason why China has even been set up is because since our actual like golden age in the 50s, when America was really at its height, and our culture was at its height, and you could get out of high school, get a factory job, buy a house, raise a family, your wife didn't have to go to work. Since that time period, our politicians have deindustrialized the United States and tried to make us an administrative state, which is why a lot of people in the United States have office jobs. And basically, we set China up to be this power, but then they double crossed us and said, well, now we're a world superpower. What are you going to do about it? And that was a big deal. So we kind of got off of our year in review here. Where were we, Rich?
Yeah, sorry. That was a little side tangent, but it's just something that we're dealing with.
It was
We were at
important.
Liberation Day, April 1st, this was something that I was following daily. Okay, the retaliation tariffs. Wow, I was so excited that we were going to be pulling in $30 billion a month. Trump was promising no income tax. He was promising $5,000 rebates. This was after he promised Doge dividends, which never happened. Sorry. $5,000 rebates. Like, this is huge. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was really excited. What happens is the stock market has completely tanked, and this is the best time to buy. Trump said it himself. He finds that he makes the most money in low markets. The market dropped drastically. The public did not know what was happening. Everyone was super scared. What happens? It's just a way for him to make trade deals. We made over 20 trade deals with all separate countries. This was actually a really good thing that I think he did. It put us in a more advantageous position, especially with Europe, with these Eastern countries that are our allies. It might have put a rift in China, and this is also around the same time that we started the trade war, which everyone's like, oh, no one wins the trade war. Well, China needs us, we need them, but we have more leverage because we're the number one consumer and they're the number one producer. What happens when we don't consume?
That's what I was just saying about us deindustrializing back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and having all of our industry go over to China. Now we live in what's called the Rust Belt. So we used to have steel plants all along the Great Lakes in the United States. All those are overseas now, and we don't have the industry that we used to have. And what happened was we sent our industry over to China, and then China, when I said that China double crossed us, they turned around and put massive tariffs on the products that we were receiving. So for 2 decades, at least 20 years since the 2000s, we've had these massive tariffs in place on Chinese goods. And, there was no politician who stood up to that. And even going back 100 years ago, we didn't have an income tax in the United States. We operated on tariffs, and we were quite successful back in those times. So, I was really excited to see a politician standing up for us and putting reciprocal tariffs. That's what a lot of people didn't understand, is that the tariffs were just matching the tariffs that we were being charged. So, it was equal. It wasn't like we were punishing China. We were giving them back a taste of their own medicine. And I was very excited that we were doing those tariffs at the time. And I wasn't so concerned about the stock market. I know that a lot of European bankers and people on the left were investing heavily in the European stock market as a way to cripple the Trump recovery and make it look like our stock market wasn't doing good. It was a manipulated number. And so Trump put in the tariffs, the stock market dipped, and then a month later, even though there was all the manipulation, we bounced back super heavily, and it was quite successful at the time.
Yeah. And all of this is happening in April. We completely bounced back in May. Now, late May, early June, this is probably the biggest, other than the Charlie Kirk assassination, this is the biggest event that's happened in a year. Israel, Iran, the 12-day war. Now, this ends up happening, and this is where a lot of American citizens, it's called the mass awakening. They flip-flop, whatever you want to call it. It's where a lot of people realize, wow, we just bombed Fordo.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? We bombed Iran. We haven't done something like this to this magnitude, to this scale, like with this amount of media coverage, especially now that it's Trump. Like it's shaking up a lot of people, and people are starting to question, why are we coming to Israel's aid? Why are we doing this? Why couldn't they do this themselves? Why are they even in this conflict? Like they don't border Iran. Why is this happening? And people start asking questions. And when people ask questions, that's when people start finding answers.
Right. So I'd say that it's important to note the context that the Republican Party was already ripping in half. This was when the big, beautiful bill was coming out, and the media was messaging heavily that, Doge was illegal and all these things. So we saw at this time, we saw the Trump administration send Elon Musk away and get rid of the Doge cuts. And they were weak on the big, beautiful bill. There was a couple sections in there that didn't make sense. Also important is that we gave a 10-year, basically responsibility-free
Yep. Yep.
thing for AI production, the AI race, which I think that AI shouldn't be a race. I think that it should be at a snail's pace. We should dip our toe in the water and see how it feels a little bit before we just dive straight in and give 10 years of immunity to AI companies. But so that was going on. And then this Israel conflict happened. And if you were really paying attention, you saw, what was that guy's name? Mike Walls or whatever? The one who tried to send headsets with the signal gate thing. Administration had set up a signal chat and invited a news anchor. He released classified or whatever secret documents. They were trying to out people, and we could see it. They outed Elon Musk. Can't hear you. Oh. There you go.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, that's really annoying because my setup is right here, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure but
wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but whatever. We're settling in with our technical difficulties, but I think eventually everything will even out. But do you remember where you were left off with Israel, Iran?
I was basically saying that at this time, the Trump administration was outing people, outing Elon Musk, outing, trying to out Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, right? She's the DHS head. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. Oh, Tulsi Gabbard. That's who I'm thinking of. So, Tulsi Gabbard tried to put our intelligence into this whole Iran-Israel conflict, and they actually excluded her from a meeting. So then all of a sudden this split happened, and it seemed like there was essentially, I don't know how else to describe it, there was essentially a pro-Israel faction of the Republican Party that went one way and tried to take off, and then there was the original MAGA, the people that had Trump's back all throughout 2016, and they kind of got left behind, and this new right-wing fake awake group tried to call us woke Republicans and tried to steal the Republican Party, and I think that they were pretty successful at that. They bombed Iran, and it didn't spiral out of control, so I was still kind of okay with it. But I was really against it because it went against what Trump said he was going to do in 2024.
Yeah. Well, and you'll notice that the Republican Party has a lot of factions. So, what I have seen from my worldview and my point of view is the Democratic Party is like this. You have this tight niche group that all align the same way. They believe in globalism, they believe in open borders, they believe in LGBTQ, DEI, and they're all the same. Where when you look at the independents to the Republican Party, the right side of the political spectrum, it's more like this. So over here you have the say you could even call them like the Nick Fuentes group. Over here you have the conspiracy theorist Candace Owens. Over in the center, MAGA. Over here there's pro-Israel. You could have people that are Zionists and people that are almost neo-Nazis in the same grouping. You know what I mean? Like that's how widespread the Republican Party has become. Where with the Democratic Party, if you don't believe in it and if you don't believe in something that they say, well, they're gonna take it out on you. They're gonna tell you that you're wrong and you need to believe this. And if you don't believe this, then you're not a Democrat. And that is where the mass and I'll even say the mass immigration to the Republican Party and the right side of the country has happened. Because if you say something wrong and you're doing everything right, you're living and you're believing in LGBTQ and DEI and you're doing everything right, but then you get called a Nazi because you say something or something along the lines of that, well, obviously that's going to ostracize some people. And it's going to make people leave the party. And you saw that in the 2024 election where Kamala got killed. The Democratic Party doesn't have leadership like the Republican Party does. But the Republican Party it's on the break. It's on the fence. You know what I mean? I'd almost say that they're probably going to lose in 2028 just because of how far everyone is.
I think that's a pretty good take. I think that 2028 is going to come down to, people who are actually getting things done. And I think that almost the real leadership of the Republican Party is people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. These people broke away from the left because the left was insane. And they're not on the Trump train either of just believing anything he says. So we're going to see a lot of independence. What I'd like to see is that we get back to the truth and back to what's right instead of listening to somebody like a Marco Rubio who was anti-Trump and then switch sides and is an opportunist and, certain things. I've liked Marco Rubio in this new term, but I don't trust him at all. I don't trust, like anyone who might follow Ben Shapiro or any of these people are really just not in touch with what's going on. And then Ben Shapiro will come on and say, oh, well, if you don't like this, then you're not MAGA. Well, you're not MAGA. You were super anti-Trump. You were a never Trumper until he bombed Bordeaux or whatever. There's this group that's trying to latch on to what we believe in. We believed that, the forever wars in the Middle East were garbage, and we believed that the Democrat Party was criminals, and we believed all these things. And then our party, I would say about 2-3 months into the Trump administration, the second Trump administration, our party was hijacked. So where we are in the year review that we're doing is the turning point of when our country was hijacked, is right around this time, March, early June. The 12-day war and all that stuff. That's when things started to not make sense. And you started saying like, okay, I don't know why he's bombing Israel, but I guess, okay. And it actually panned out pretty good. But, that was a clear line where I said, "Is Trump compromised? Why is he doing all this? This isn't what we voted for." And
Yep.
he's been like that ever since.
Yeah, and I think around that time he has become compromised. And something that you said earlier on, it was something that really reminded me of this. But after his assassination attempt, they attempted to assassinate him. He got shot in the ear. 2 days later, he announces that JD Vance is his nominee, and he's going to run with him in 2024. Well, he's a freshman senator. He's friends with Peter Thiel. He's friends with that PayPal mafia. I don't really like the guy. And that's a problem because going into this, before I knew a lot about him, before I knew that he changed his name 5 times, I liked him. He destroyed Tim Walz in that debate. He's a great talker. He really knows what to say and how to almost put himself in the right position of power. He knows what to say to get the people going. But the problem that I have with him is he's not real. He's not a real person. And that's something that we need realism.
He was another one. Like Marco Rubio was an ever Trumper. JD Vance was an ever Trumper. Susie Wiles. I don't know why nobody talks about her, but she is a really bad person. Also, Pam Bondi. We didn't talk about any of Trump's appointments, but going back, Pam Bondi hasn't done anything all year. She's a total waste of space, just completely. And I mean this. I'm being generous here when I say that she is the worst person and the biggest roadblock in the Trump administration. And really, she should have been fired 6 months ago. They mishandled everything. She brought on Todd Blanche. He's a total piece of garbage. So, this time period, we started to see that Trump's appointments didn't make much sense. And actually, I'd like to say that Matt Gaetz was going to be the attorney general, and he got outed by this blackmail scheme. He's coming out. There was arrests made for basically a $25 million blackmail scheme where Matt Gaetz didn't get the appointment. So there's a lot going on in the Trump administration to undermine the things that he wanted to do. And you could see it. Trump's not operating on his own free will. The FBI is not operating on their own free will. It's really sad that we've allowed ourselves to basically, the ship was getting hijacked, and we basically just gave the hijackers the steering wheel and said, "Here you go ahead and drive us, into whatever, It's pretty sad what happened, and I think that all my optimism went right down the drain when we bombed the Fordo site.
Yeah. And I think we stayed on this topic so long just because of how big this actually was to the American people and what it did to American politics. This bombing, and you would almost think that, oh, well, we only bombed 3 sites. It took 21 hours in total. No one was harmed. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal. This is a really big deal. People have woken up. People are starting to ask questions. And when people ask questions, people get hurt. Now, maybe not physically, but mentally, politically, things can happen that may not be the best, which is a very scary time. Now, fast forward a couple months, Charlie Kirk is at Utah Valley University, gets assassinated by alleged Tyler Robinson, and this is a huge shift. Now, Charlie Kirk was keeping the right, very pro-Trump. He was trying to keep everyone together. He had his questions on Israel,
in Zionism, but he was one of their main supporters. He was their poster child, and he started to question things, but he was always there for Israel. He was their biggest, I would almost say biggest fan, biggest supporter in the West. And when he got assassinated, this just shifted the Republican Party even more. So
Right.
there is conspiracy theorists that I almost would put in the middle. Okay, the Candace Owens of the world, they are questioning TPUSA and all of this. Then to the right of the spectrum, I'd put the Nick Fuentes group, where his quote unquote generational run started after Israel and Iran's war, but really picked up after Charlie Kirk's assassination, where a lot of young men saw, well, if he's getting assassinated for talking, like that radicalized a lot of young men. Okay, so that pushed people very radical on the right. Then there's the left, which isn't obviously the left, but I'm saying it in this situation, which is still the pro-Zionist group, the MAGA, which I actually do consider MAGA a Zionist movement now, because everyone who's left MAGA is asking for the Epstein files to be released, and everyone that left MAGA is also anti-Israel. So MAGA, to this point, is a Zionist movement, I would say. I mean, we have the first Jewish president in office, allegedly. That's what he said. He wins all of these Israeli prizes. We have never given this prize to anyone that's not an Israeli. And President Trump, here you go. You are the first person. Well, what does that even do? That doesn't help the everyday American citizen. The Israel Peace Prize they gave him. Okay, well, congratulations, President Trump, in receiving that. But the Charlie Kirk assassination, I mean, there's events in my life that I remember where I was. Trump's inauguration, when Trump had the assassination attempt, and Will actually was the first one to report in our family group chat that Charlie Kirk got shot. And when I saw that, I looked it up on X. Unfortunately, I saw it, and it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen. It literally gave me a stomach ache for hours. And even the day that it happened, we had a football game, and we were gathered together as a group. The football game was the next day, and we were all talking about it, and we were like the whole team, and we have a inspirational speaker, Coach Masters, very well known in this area. And he was just sitting there talking with our coach. And it was a really surreal moment as an American citizen to see that. And in the whole country, other than people that were celebrating it, which I would say radicalized it even more, made people radicalized even more, everyone was mourning his death. President Putin,
I want to go off on some of the tales of what you said, because you said that at that point, Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. He was holding the whole thing together. Charlie Kirk was holding the whole thing together. He had his questions about Israel and bombing, the Middle East and all those things. And so the left, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, they just went crazy. All people with blue hair and septum piercings got online and celebrated that he was shot, and that was disgusting. And then Ben Shapiro jumped up on his soapbox and he said, "Oh, I guess I'll have to take one for the team and lead TPUSA now," which was obvious to anybody that this guy was trying to grab the Republican Party and turn our heads and say, "Hey, look over here." He was, all these Israel First people wanted to jump on TPUSA and take it where they wanted it to go. And they saw it as their opportunity, and they seized it. And they were pretty disrespectful and disgusting about it, the way that they went about it. They weren't like really remorseful or mournful. They were more like, okay, new messaging, and they tried to really turn the Republican Party the way they wanted to go. And they caused a small group to go this way. And those people were these people that, like Cat Turd and like random nameless X accounts where people don't show their face or their real name, but they just, without question, supported anything that Trump wanted to do. And Trump loves flattery, so he seemed to almost go along with these people. And when all these people separated from MAGA, the original group that was MAGA that got Trump elected in the first place in 2016, they were left behind, holding the bag, thinking like, how did we get here? So then you said Nick Fuentes. I think more like maybe I actually watched Nick Fuentes interviews with Alex Jones, and both of those guys had this mindset. Okay, let's sit back. Let's let the facts come out. Let's see the evidence of what happened with Charlie Kirk. Let's not jump to conclusions and say it was the transgender mafia or it was Israel and Egyptian planes and all this stuff. And then, so you got your two groups, Israel and original MAGA, and then this weird, random, dumb group like Candace Owens. And I hate to rope him in with her. Tucker Carlson became randomly super pro-Muslim. But Candace Owens really dove right off the deep end into a pool with no water and cracked her head right on the bottom. It was like the dumbest thing she could have done. She was very trusted, and she, now she's talking about there was Egyptian planes following Erica Kirk, but Erica Kirk was at some military meeting at Fort Huachuca, setting up the assassination and all this dumb stuff that has no basis in reality or facts. So stripping away all these opinions and everything, what we know is that nobody trusts the official story. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sure everyone knows little factoids and this and that. How did he take apart the gun? How did he jump off the roof with the gun down his pants? And get to the bottom and bend his legs to brace for the fall. But he had a full-size rifle in his pants. Why does the picture, the still image that they took of him, not even look like the guy? How did that George Zinn guy, said, I shot him, and they arrested him, and it turned out that he didn't do it. And later he came out and said, oh yeah, I just said that so that whoever could shoot him could get away, or whoever shot him could get away. I wanted to distract the police. Why isn't that guy arrested? What about the 10 transgender people who, said, hey, you watch tomorrow when Charlie Kirk gets to the university, he'll be dead. Then the next day after he died, they said, see, we told you. So, you've got this left-wing group that clearly, obviously, had foreknowledge of the whole thing. And the whole thing spiraled out of control. All these different theories. It was almost like they were purposely saying bad things to confuse people so that you couldn't follow the real story. And this is kind of an unknown fact, or was an unknown thing at the time, but since has come out. And Alex Jones reported on it. A lot of people didn't want to touch it. Alex Jones reported on it, and it turned out that he had the dates right, everything right about what he said. That there was a meeting at that time within the White House where Tulsi Gabbard wanted to bring in a list of potential accomplices and things that they wanted to go down. And Kash Patel literally flipped out. It was a screaming match. This was reported to people in the media by people who were in the meeting. and since it happened, months later now, the mainstream media actually picked up and reported the story. Um, so they Cash Patel literally shut down any investigation into any accomplices, foreign or domestic, and they went with the one shooter lone wolf storyline. And Cash Patel's sitting there with his eyes all bugged out, sweating down his forehead, uh, clearly lying to us, saying things that weren't true, and saying things that when you're the head of the department that's investigating a crime like that, you don't say stuff like we found this or we found that, because you keep your cards against your chest so that when you actually hand down the charges, you don't have a tainted jury pool or any reason that the guilty party could get a mistrial. So they muddied the waters and basically gave him a way to get out by tainting the jury pool. But they were so desperate for a win, the FBI and Cash Patel, and in effect, the Trump administration in general was so desperate to get a win off of this that they started releasing all this information and saying we're the most transparent. We're going to look into the planes and the bullets and Cash Patel wrote up a list of all the theories that people had, and he said, I'm going to address each and every one of these questions. And then as soon as he got off the interview, he took the list, crumpled it up, threw it in the garbage, went to a meeting, and said, we're not looking at anything other than one guy, Tyler Robinson. He did it. Nobody ask any questions or, whatever. Basically, we just won't look at it. And that's really, really upsetting because, like you said, after Charlie Kirk got assassinated, I don't even think I ate food for 2 days. I was very upset. And, the videos showed a bunch of inconsistencies and a bunch of questionable things where people, immediately could see that there was more to the story than what meets the eye. And, in the weeks and months following that, the Trump administration basically hasn't given us anything other than what they gave us 1 week after, which really doesn't make any sense. If you go back and you look at that whole event and all the evidence, the official narrative doesn't make any sense. And then you've got Tyler Robinson going to his initial hearing wearing a trans colored tie and smirking and smiling. And, I'm not sure what the real story is because I don't have a fact. A lot of people who are anti-Israel act as if there's a piece of paper signed by Netanyahu that says, I order you to kill Charlie Kirk. And then a lot of people in the other group act like, there's a whole other story of things that can't be proven, but they know it for a fact. And, it's all this stuff. And then there's just sensible people who say, hey, none of this makes sense. We have a ton of questions. Release the information or look into these things. And basically, I think in the end, we're just not going to get any answers. But, it's pretty scary because all these people, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, even Alex Jones, Charlie Kirk was going to have Alex Jones speak at the event. Tucker Carlson was one of Charlie Kirk's last things, was inviting Tucker Carlson to America Fest 2025, which just recently happened. So there was a lot of division, and these people, didn't unite over the issue. They divided over the issue, and everybody wanted to take the Republican Party in their own way, in their own direction.
Yeah. And I almost feel like the Charlie Kirk assassination has made public trust of the government very, very rare. I mean, I don't think I've talked to a single person that has completely trusted the government. Maybe one person in the last 6 months, where this event has been one of the largest assassinations, most televised assassinations ever. And it's live, it's live. It happened where I almost would say that this is probably the biggest assassination when it comes to just where it was in the time period. We're in the social media era, and he got assassinated during the social media era. This is the time where everything's broadcasted. This is why Israel's public approval is so low. Everyone sees what they're doing in Gaza because it's televised, live televised. This isn't Tiananmen Square where you're seeing Tank Man, and Tiananmen Square, and then the news just gets cut off. No, everyone is the news. Independent journalism is the largest thing, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing of 2026 is independent journalism. I think that it is the best way for someone to get information without any bias or without any propaganda. It's something that I think we need to look into. The Charlie Kirk assassination, there's so many different theories, and for people to say this is fact and this happens, like, no one knows. You don't know that Israel killed Charlie Kirk. How are you going to come and tell me that they 100% did it? What's your proof saying that they did that? That's the thing. But then when you say that, people on the right will say, oh, well, you're a Zionist. You know what I mean? And it's almost like they're fear-mongering their own party. It's just look at the facts. If it's not factual and you don't have factual evidence, then it's a theory. It's a conspiracy theory. There's a difference between conspiracy theories and conspiracy realism. And conspiracy realism is very different. You need to separate the two, because I'd consider myself a conspiracy realist, where I wouldn't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. I'm not just going to make stuff up because it fits my narrative. That's what politicians are, and I want to be above that. You know what I mean? You need to elevate yourself above what the politicians are doing, because they're trying to fearmonger us to believe their own theory. You know what I mean? So that's basically everything I had to say about Charlie Kirk when it comes to the situation. Now, what me and Will are going to do as we hit the hour mark is go into the future and 2026. Now, this is something that is a very scary time, okay? We have currently we have Russia-Ukraine, which is just heating up even more, as Ukraine attacks Putin's home, one of his homes. Now, they had a drone strike on Putin, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago, 6, 7 months ago. They had a drone strike on him. Now you're going to attack his home. Like, what is the leverage that you want? Do you want them to take half the country? Because it doesn't make sense to me. If you want them to stop at the Donbass region, you need to stop escalating the war. And then Trump wants to come out and say that this is the closest we've been to a peace deal. How in the world is this the closest we've been? After Ukraine bombs Putin's home? Like Putin has not tried to assassinate Zelensky. It hasn't happened. So
If anything, Putin's been very reserved in his approach. Now, Russia has massive weapons. We saw them use the Oreshnik 2 missile. That is a space-launched, basically man-made meteor. It doesn't violate any nuclear proliferation treaties, and it has all the power of a nuclear bomb without the fallout, the radiation fallout. So they have these massive weapons that they could use, and I think they've been pretty reserved. You know, they came in, they took inch by inch. Now, when some of the peace deals, in the later part of 2025, when some of those peace deals started falling apart, now Russia's full steam ahead. They've taken plenty of cities since the peace deals really fell apart, and they're kind of ramping up their war effort. But a war is a war. If you're going to be at war, you can't complain that the other side is like if you're in a boxing match, you go in the ring, you're across from the guy, boom, he hits you, boom, he hits you. You can't look at the referee and say he's hitting me too hard. You're in a fight. So Ukraine using like they're in a peace deal and Russia attacks a city or something, peace talks, they're in peace talks and Russia attacks the city. You can't be like, oh, well, then we're not doing a peace deal. It's like you're at war. And then another thing with the peace deals, Ukraine won't give Russia any of the territory they took. So what does that mean? Is Ukraine gonna go and win those territories back? No, they're already taken by Russia. So what gives you the entitlement to think, well, that's our land? No, it's not. It's already taken. What are you gonna do about it? What are you going to do about it unless you drag the United States and NATO into the war and cause World War III? And it'd be very simple diplomatically to just say, it sucks. Ukraine got part of its thing taken. They have to give up some of their mineral rights and some of their land or whatever. But at least we preserve the world and don't get into another giant, huge, multi-front global war. And the more and more that this conflict goes on, like we've seen troops from the Philippines, was it, fighting with Russia alongside with Russia?
No, that was North Korea.
Oh, North Korea, sorry. We've seen troops from there fighting alongside with Russia, and then Russia obviously backs Iran, and Russia backs Venezuela. And China backs Venezuela. That's mostly China, but the more and more that the Ukraine conflict goes on, the more and more we see our enemies coming together, and the more and more we see the West starting to fall apart. The United States won't run to Europe's aid, and so then Europe, is a part of NATO, is going to break off and call themselves the Northern Group, and they're going to fight until the last Ukrainian.
Mm-hmm.
We got to preserve Ukraine, so let's send every man, woman, child. Let's expand the age for conscription. And hey, Germany, be ready, because when we call up a draft, you're gonna have to go fight. All these countries are ready to go to the ends of the earth to fight for Ukraine, for something that if they would just give up the territory and just accept what happened. Crimea actually is the birthplace of Russia. That's where Russia started. And Ukraine wasn't really a country 100 years ago anyway. I don't see the importance or the need to go fight for a dictatorship like Ukraine. And I say dictatorship because that's what they are.
Yeah, they haven't had an election since the war has started. As Trump says, Zelensky's numbers are so low. I believe he said 4%. He said 4% at the beginning of this year. Now, I don't understand where Ukraine has come from, where they believe that they can win this war. And I see people online, I'm in the comments section talking about foreign aid, and someone's like, we need to give more foreign aid to Ukraine so they can win this war and beat Russia. pause. You're not going to beat Russia. Russia is the third strongest country in the entire world. Okay, they're the third strongest country in the entire world. Ukraine, you're nobody. Okay, as Trump says, you have no cards, but with us, you have the cards. With the number one superpower, you have the cards. Now, what they need to do is they need to cut it off. They need to just take the Donbass region, take Crimea, take your Russian citizens who already identify as Russian, because, you know, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. They identify as Russian, like Belarus. Take your little area, stop, let us have a military. That's what they need to do, all right? But what they're going to do is they're going to continue to fight. They're going to lose more land, and then eventually they're going to be screwed, and they're going to be in a worse position than they already were. Now, do I see a full annexation? No. But could I see the country being fully occupied? Yeah. And I could see the entire eastern half being taken by Russia instead of just the Donbass region? Yeah. No, for sure. And then you also look, Kyiv will be way closer to the Russian border. Well, that's your own fault, okay? That's completely your own fault. This war should have never happened. We have NATO coming on Russia's border and bordering all of Russia from the Arctic all the way down to, you know, the Baltic region and now Poland. And they want to threaten, you know, Joe Biden goes, Ukraine would be a great addition to NATO. Well, no, they wouldn't. And now you just caused one of the deadliest wars since World War II. And that's you know, something that we shouldn't have had to deal with. You know, now Ukraine is in jeopardy of existing because we want to expand NATO. Now, you want to talk about Russian expansion. You want to talk about Russian expansion being imperialist, right? They're an imperialist country. They're living in the 20th century. Well, what about NATO expansion? Now, you can't just look at it from a Western's point of view and be like, well, we're the free world. We need to do this. Well, no, because we've expanded to past East Germany to Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Sweden, Finland, and then all of the Balkans that I haven't even talked about that we've added. Now, what are we doing? Because we're expanding just like them, but worse, because we're putting them in a corner. Now, to say that Russia is the good guy in the war, no, they invaded Ukraine, obviously, but they're not the bad guy. You know, you can't just call them the bad guy. We stand with Ukraine. Well, you put Ukraine in this position, you know? Yep, and that's my full assessment. If you have anything else, you can add on to it, but if not, we can move to Israel, Iran.
I'd just like to go real quick. Yep. So in 2013, leading up to Ukraine's election, where they elected Zelensky, the NATO had Zelensky. Zelensky was a NATO sympathizing candidate, and then there was a Russian sympathizing candidate. The Russian sympathizing candidate won the presidency of Ukraine, and then NATO stepped in and said, "Oh, this election was unfair. We need to do a re-election." And you know, there was manipulation, and Zelensky became the president of Ukraine. So all these citizens who, let's just say we voted for Trump and our election got stolen and we ended up with Biden, that's how they felt. They were pro-Russia, and they got their election stolen. And then, you know, U.S. intelligence came in and was helping Ukraine. So Ukraine hired the Ashkenazi, military force. The whole thing leading up to this was all NATO pushing. And when the USSR broke up, Russia had a treaty, and they said, okay, well, if these countries end up needing our help because NATO is coming in and expanding and attacking and trying to push whatever their agenda is, then if we need to step in, we'll step in. So Ukraine had a civil war going on. Parts of the eastern part of Ukraine seceded from the Union before Russia ever did anything. So the part of Ukraine that was pro NATO on the western half, they went in and started rounding people up and making them sing the Ukrainian national anthem and declare loyalty, and they aggressively went after these people to the point where Russia said, "All right, we have to step in to save these people." I think that the whole thing was driven and caused by NATO, and now we're going to turn around and play the victims because Putin, stepped in. I don't buy it. I don't believe in it. I love America, but I wish that America didn't take the position that they took in the war. So therefore, just from like a heartfelt human standpoint, this war was fully caused by NATO and could have been avoided had we not taken such an aggressive stance against Russia in the area.
Yeah, and I would say that you're right. NATO has the blood on their hands, and it's not all on Russia. What I'm seeing is NATO and along with Israel are really pushing East versus West, which is going to cause World War III. What we should actually do, and obviously this is my point of view as an American citizen, as a America First podcaster, I think that we should first of all leave NATO. We can have a agreement with them that if they need us and they need our aid, just like World War I, World War II, we will come and fight for them. But we are going to leave NATO. They can create that into the EU, whatever they want to do, but we're going to leave NATO. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Secondly, we need to take off the sanctions on Russia after this war ends and start actually trading with them and become a economic partner with Russia. If we could separate Russia and China because we're pushing them closer together, who's going to win, number 1 or number 2 and 3 combined? You don't want a 2v1. You want to separate Russia from China. Russia is more Western than Eastern, but we're pushing them east because we're alienating them, because we have been told the last 100 years that the Soviet Union is our number 1 enemy. That's a neocon thought. We don't need to have an enemy, and we already do. It's China. So where are we coming from to say that Russia is the bad guy and we need to alienate them and push them eastward? Because if we do that, World War III is inevitable, okay? We can't do this. Speaking of Israel, I'm very worried about the future of Israel and the United States with our allyship. Now, first of all, an allyship and being allies is give or take. It's give and you take. Now, when you talk about what we've received since 1948, everything's gone down. We've gotten more immigration. We've gotten worse cities. The crime rate has gone way up. We've gotten abortion. We've gotten crazy people now. Like, people are psychotic at this point. And I'm going to say on both sides, people are very radicalized. People are brainwashed, and it's a problem. Okay. That's what we've gotten. They've gotten, more territory than they already did. And I believe they were at 48%. Now they're well above 50 in versus them in Palestine. They've gone into multiple wars. They've gotten us into $10 trillion of debt from their wars. Now, what we talked about on episode 2, Bibi Netanyahu is in-house. He is in the United States. I asked Will, we posted a YouTube short on this. I asked him, what do you think he's here for? What is he here for? Will goes, well, I think he's here for our funding. I think he's here to have our men, and not to misquote you, but to have our men come and fight for his country and to fight for his war. And that's obviously paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And what happens is Trump comes out and they ask him, they say, do you approve of Israel bombing Iran if they need to? And Trump says, yes, make it quick. You have to make it quick. As long as it's quick, it's fine.
Yeah.
What? Are you serious? Make it quick. And this is something that I've envisioned this, and I'm scared, right? I'm actually scared of the future. Make it quick. If you bomb Iran, do you think it's gonna be quick? Do you think that it's gonna be quick that Israel bombs Iran? Or do you think that BB's in house, BB's in America? Obviously, Iran knows that. They know what they're doing. They declare war on the United States along with the West. Well, what is the West? I just said it. The West is NATO and Israel. No, is this declaration of war against America? Is Iran going to go to war with America? No, they're going to war with Israel. They declared war on the West. That's Israel. They're not going to attack Europe. They're going to attack Israel. This is shaping up to be one of the scariest time periods that we have been in the last 5-10 years, where if Israel and Iran go to war, like seriously, this is a huge problem. America's going to be funding it. We've seen what they did. They funded Palestine's genocide, and the Gaza Strip. They funded it with no problems. Over the last 5 years, over $30 billion gone to Israeli aid. Of the taxpayers' money, we're going to be funding this war, and I really hope it doesn't happen. But if we have troops in the Middle East, this is going to be a huge political shift. If we put troops in the Middle East once again, this isn't the 2000s. This isn't the 2010s anymore.
Oh, yeah.
This is the 2020s, the late 2020s. We are in the second half of this decade. People are awake. People are realizing what's going on. And we're done funding Israel wars. We're done funding their genocides. And we're done messing up the Middle East because we're destabilizing the Middle East and they're coming to our countries, which is completely unregulated. It's not regulated. And the crime rates are spiking. And they're coming in waves of millions of people. And you look at Europe, you look at the United States, and it's unrecognizable. It's not the same country it was 40, 30 years ago. And it's because of us. It's because we're destabilizing them. Gaddafi, all of these, and when you look at all of the world leaders, Saddam Hussein, we completely destabilized all of their countries. We went to war with over 7 Middle Eastern countries. And if we go to war with Iran, they'd already declared war on us in the West, which I believe is them going to war with Israel. If Israel strikes Iran, who's to say that they don't have a couple other countries that join in? We've seen it in the 6-Day War. So it's a very concerning time to be not just an American citizen, but just to be alive in this political climate.
Well, so let's just say that I don't offer my full support for anything that Netanyahu comes over here and asks for. They would call you anti-Semitic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is pro-Israel to say, hey, Israel, you're a country the size of New Jersey. There is very little chance that you can do very much in the Middle East by yourselves. Okay, you would need America to step in and fight your war for you. So why don't you keep your mouth shut, because you guys don't really have a leg to stand on. And if you want your country turned into a parking lot, then go ahead and keep doing what you're doing. I would say that that's a pro-Israel stance to say, hey, don't let your big mouth get you into trouble and have your country destroyed, and then expect us to run in and fight for you. Because, politically, there's not very much support for it here in the United States. That's not even a guarantee that we would even come and fight for you. Maybe with Trump as president, but, he'll be gone in 3 years. What's going to happen to Israel when you guys talk yourselves into a whole bunch of trouble and let's say the support for Israel dies off in a couple of years? It's not a guaranteed thing that we fight for you. So maybe out of self-preservation, you guys don't get yourselves into war with Iran. I would say that's a pro-Israel standpoint, instead of calling it anti-Semitic. Anything that, Israel wants to do, if they want to do it, they could do it. And if you don't like it, then you're anti-Semitic. No, we're not anti-Semitic. We see the potential of the problem and think, hey, let's avoid this. You guys already own a big piece of land, not that big, the size of New Jersey. You guys already own your stuff. Why don't you just leave it alone? Why don't you just let things be the way they are? Why don't you, but they'll come over here and say, oh, well, Iran is 2 weeks away from a bomb. If Iran has been 2 weeks away from a bomb since, what did we say the other day? 1995.
Yep, 1995.
That's 30 years. So if Iran has been 2 weeks away from a bomb for 30 years, and you take 52 weeks a year divided by 2, that's 26. Iran has been 2 weeks away from a bomb 26 times for 30 years. What's 26 times 30?
780.
That's how many times that Israel's been wrong about Iran being 2 weeks away from a bomb. So why don't we just relax and let's just say in 1995, if they were 2 weeks away from a bomb and nothing Netanyahu says could ever be wrong, let's just say that, let's take him for his word. He was right 30 years ago. Then why haven't they used a bomb for 30 years? And what's the point of fighting it this much? Or, and aside from that, Israel has a nuclear bomb themselves. So don't be hypocritical. Let Iran do the same thing you're doing. Or Israel, you give all your nukes up because you guys are doing the same thing they are. How do we know that Iran doesn't feel threatened by the fact that Israel has nuclear bombs and they won't sign the proliferation treaty?
No, they definitely do. They definitely do.
I'm pro-Western. I want our side of the world and our beliefs and our not Judeo-Christian values, our Christian values to be pushed forward. But not like this. Not like this. This is an embarrassment to the West. This isn't us standing strong together. This is us looking weak and being hypocritical and being unfair to the rest of the world. Guess what? We're pushing all these countries together to align directly against us. Eventually, they're going to do something about it, and we may or may not be, Trump's like, oh, well, we're building all these war class ships to sail on the sea. Guess what? The Navy hasn't really been much of a factor for 100 years. What are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I have a little statistic, okay? Now, the sources that I used for this is wikipedia.org, congress.gov, foreignassistant.gov, foreignassistant.gov, cfr.org, usanews.com. Okay, those are just 5 out of the 52 sources that I've used for this. So you can look up all this information on your own. I gave you the sources. Now, listen to me when I talk. Ukraine. Okay, the number 1 most assisted country when it comes to foreign aid. Obviously, they're in a proxy war with Russia. Okay, $250 to $300 billion over the last 5 years. That's a lot, and obviously the majority comes from the United States, as grants. We're giving them as a grant. We're giving it to them. We're not getting it back. We're not getting it in minerals. Now we are, because they're going to start buying the weapons off of us, or Europe's going to buy the weapons off of us to give to Ukraine. But that's only under Trump. And even that is a certain extent, not exactly ideal with what we originally wanted out of the mineral deal. Who's number 2? Who do you think number 2 is, Will?
Israel.
Yeah, Israel. And by a good margin. The projected number of foreign assistance is $31 to $37 billion. It says right here, primarily U.S. military grants, 30 to 35 billion, including a baseline 3.8 billion per year, plus the post 2023 surge of $22 billion for operations and replenishments. Minor EU research grants of $1.5 billion. So they're getting $31 to $37 billion to go to war with Palestine and to bomb Iran. Well, that has completely destabilized the world. We're giving them $37 billion to destabilize the East and the West. Now, who's number three? You'd actually, and I didn't know this, which is why I'm happy I looked it up. It's Afghanistan, 15 to 20 billion. Pre-2021 Taliban takeover saw high U.S. international flows of $4 to $8 billion per year of military and humanitarian. So
what was that number?
15 to 20 billion, and we were sending them $4 to $8 billion per year for military and humanitarian.
Plus, you gotta you gotta factor in that we left, what was it, $70 billion worth of military equipment behind.
Yeah, just gave it to them. We just gave them all of our equipment that we had there because Joe Biden wanted to pull our troops out after 20 years.
The most embarrassing thing in U.S. military history was the Afghan pullout.
Yeah. No, and it's disgusting. I mean, it's even more embarrassing than Israel taking out the USS Liberty on the world stage during the 6-day war, and we did nothing about it except for charge them a small amount of money. Now, why? Why is that? Why is this nation the only nation that has attacked us that we haven't retaliated? When Spain did that, we went into the Spanish-American War. When allegedly, the Taliban and ISIS and all of these terrorist groups that were going to do terrorist attacks like 9/11 on the United States, we went to war with 7 countries. Now, why are we just, it's a military vessel and it gets shot down. The people on board that didn't die, they're saying that it was a deliberate attack. They said it was a deliberate attack.
It didn't get shot down. It made it back to port. It's the most decorated warship in naval history, the USS Liberty. They seen the planes coming and said, "Oh my God, put up our biggest flag." They put up their biggest flag, and Israeli pilots flew over and they said, "We have orders to attack this ship, sir. There's an American flag on it." And Israel said, "Bomb it anyway." Well, those people disobeyed the orders, turned around, didn't do it. Israel had to send other planes to come out, people that would carry out the attack. They attacked the ship. They sent gunboats, which Ben Shapiro laughed and said, "We did it by accident. And then we sent boats to go help the people." No, those were gunboats that attacked the ship after it was bombed by the airplanes. That was a deliberate attack to try and blame the attack on Egypt so that we could get into war for Israel against Egypt.
It's crazy, dude. And
how are they our ally?
Ben Shapiro wants to say, and he wonders why he lost 30,000 subscribers over the last 28 days. He says America is not affordable anymore. If you can't afford it, if you can't afford to live here, you shouldn't live here. Move somewhere else. Well, how about you move somewhere else? You have dual citizenship. And this is another huge problem with the government today. Now, if we're not talking about PACs and special interest groups that are corrupting our politicians, the number one, in my opinion, is dual citizenship, because how are you supposed to pledge your allegiance as an American citizen when you're not only an American citizen? Now, it comes out that Ilhan Omar might not even have been an American citizen and that she could have married her brother to get into the U.S. Now, how does this happen? How does this corruption get allowed into our government? Because how did we go from George Washington saying we shouldn't have any political parties, you can only have 2 terms, and giving us the blueprint, to instantly we create political parties, and instantly just over a 250 year span, our country gets torn apart.
Drug into every European war that they had, and I think that you shouldn't be allowed to be a local government judge if you weren't born in America. Born in America. I don't think you should be allowed to be a federal employee with any power over American people if you weren't an American yourself from the time you were born. You see, basically with Ilhan Omar, we fought a war, or they were a war-torn country, which Ilhan Omar would paint herself as being a refugee that was rescued by America. But a lot of people don't know that her family was the people, the warlords of Somalia. So she wasn't just a person, she's like Somalian royalty. Okay. So we took all these refugees and we picked them up and put them in one district on purpose, intentionally, for the sole purpose and intent of having a Somali congressperson in office. That is what the left does. And that's why the left is so successful, because they can gerrymander and create, voting blocks in specific areas and have a sanctuary city turn into a congressperson. They can manipulate our politics. So now we have Ilhan Omar, who's gonna reside and oversee over all this fraud that collects money off the American people and sends money back to Al-Shabaab, terrorist organization. And that's just one example of blatant, obvious evidence that we can't have foreigners come into this country and try and make decisions for the American people, because they can't be trusted. They can't be trusted not to turn a blind eye to the funding of a terrorist group, so that Ilhan Omar's family back in Somalia can take back the leadership and be the ruler of the pirates again. That's what Somalia is. When your country is most well known for being pirates, why do we think then that it's a good idea to take millions of them and say, "Oh yeah, come on over"? That literally doesn't make any sense. Just on the face of it. But then, all the way up to the highest levels, they're getting caught in fraud. Then when they get caught in fraud, they're getting caught bribing the juries. And then when they get caught with that, a judge who's probably on the payroll says, "Oh, well, I know that they own the company and they defrauded the government, but I think someone else should have been held responsible." So they let them off, but then they never bring down charges on the people that you think are supposed to be responsible, so everyone gets away with it. The whole system, and especially the state of Minnesota, is basically just working for this group of Somalis so that they can stay in power, because they've installed a huge voting block of Somalis that now the entire state has to pander to. And then the Middle East, what we were saying about Israel wanted us to go to war against 7 countries for them. And then all the refugees we took in, now we basically have the Israel versus the Middle East conflict taking place in the United States, like we saw with the universities and things like that. Now we got to pass anti-Semitism laws, but then, Tucker's all pro Muslims, and what is the point of having their conflict be here? Let's be pro-American. Let's say, Israel, we pay for you. Sit down and shut up. Let the big boys talk for a minute. Come here, Iran. Listen, you guys can't have a nuclear weapon, and if you do, then X, Y, and Z is going to happen, or whatever. Neither one of these people were the world superpower. Neither one of these countries should even be in the conversation.
Mhm.
We run the show, but maybe we don't run the show. Maybe we're weak. We're making ourselves look that way.
Well, and it's hard. It's hard to run the show when, let me be careful with how I say this. It's hard to run the show and be the big brother when your little brother is a millionaire. All right, you're broke. Your little brother's a millionaire, and he's funding you. He gives you the money to survive. He has all of your, and what I mean by that is all your congressmen.
When your little brother
are funded by them.
When your little brother paid off all your best friends to work for him.
Yeah, it's a problem because when you look at it, I've heard this. I've watched a lot of documentaries. Every congressman has an APAC employee. They have an APAC guy, and it's why? And why can they write legislation and create stuff?
Yeah,
that's the problem with PACs and special interests.
Even for domestic intelligence, the FBI, when you become an FBI agent, you have to go to an ADL funded training course to tell you what domestic terrorism is. So the ADL, who's supposedly Americans, but operates solely for the benefit of Israel, when they get to tell our FBI agents what domestic terrorism is, it's white men, it's Muslims, they write the book on that stuff, and you can't divert from that. That's your FBI training. So then they basically run our policy, run our policing, run our law enforcement, all for their own benefit. And basically there's a lot of politicians who, like Ted Cruz, who, like, I'm running because I'm gonna be the most pro-Israel congressman in all of Congress. What the hell? We're electing you to represent us, not Israel. Israel could get blown off the face of the planet, and guess what? If there wasn't news to report on it, we wouldn't even notice because it's on the opposite side of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to preserve Israel. I don't want Jerusalem being turned into a mosque or a Muslim place or whatever. But in reality, what does it really matter? It's a piece of land the size of New Jersey that we don't benefit from at all. We lose billions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the Jewish people. Obviously, over time, they've been kicked out of everywhere that they've been. A lot of countries, and that's biblical. In Revelations, they say, be wary of those Jews who say they are Jews, but they are not Jews, and they're a part of the synagogue of Satan. There's a lot of biblical stuff that comes into play when talking about today. And that's something that I really pay attention to. But the thing with me, honestly, and because we had a great long talk. We're about to hit an hour 45. It's just, I love all people. I drive around, and I see little kids of all races, little Muslim kids, little white kids, little black kids, and they're all happy. They're all innocent. And that's something that we need to protect and persevere. We need to protect innocence and children. We need to stop looking at race and religion as like weaponizing it. But like, it doesn't matter to me if you're a Jew, if you are Muslim, If you are living in the United States and you support the United States and you are an American first, that's all that matters to me. The problem that I have, when people, especially when people will just say a broad claim like the Jews, it's not the Jews, it's Zionism, and it's the pro-Israel movement. Now, Israel isn't the Israel of 2,000 years ago. Israel is the nation created in 1948. The Ottoman Empire fell. Israel was created. Palestine's land, in a sense, was stolen, but also that's alleged, all land stolen. So you can't make the argument that it's their land. All land stolen. How is Europe's borders created? War. So like exactly what I'm saying right now is you can't say that. All right. So,
I think a good example for people. Now, this is talking about Italian immigration, okay? But this applies to Muslims, Jewish people, anyone who wants to immigrate here. When I was in third grade, because America has an agenda and wants to promote multiculturalism, and America has an agenda, and I think it's an agenda set by the left to, where they want to, like 2-3 years before the mass migration into the United States by Spanish-speaking countries, Latin American countries, they have Despacito, Drake come out and speak Spanish. If it's foreign, it ain't boring or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
All these dumb things where they promote, multiculturalism. So it's clearly an agenda. So when I was a kid, I was in third grade. I went to school. They had Multicultural Day where they were going to celebrate all different cultures around the world. And I went into Multicultural Day. I brought my grandma Giardina's spaghetti sauce recipe, which is a family secret, but she gave it up so that I could, participate in showing what my culture was and all that stuff. So, being a little kid, I thought, hey, multiculturalism, everyone's equal. We should all be celebrated in the United States and all this stuff. Well, I go to my grandpa Giardina's after school that day, and he had a swimming pool, so we went over there to swim. And, I walked in the house, and I kind of wanted to bait my grandpa Giardina into telling me about his Italian heritage. I said, hey, Grandpa, we had Multicultural Day at school today. I was like, what ethnicity are you? Even though I already knew. I just wanted him to tell me about being Italian. And he said, I'm an American. I said, oh, yeah, but your parents were born in Italy, right? He goes, yeah, but I'm an American. And I even maybe 2 or 3 more times said, but you're like culturally Italian, right? He said, no, I'm not. I'm an American. His family must have been so proud to come over here that they, like I said last week, I'm pretty Irish too. I'm not going to come over here and try and infiltrate the government so that we can send resources over to Ireland so that they could take back Northern Ireland from England and promote some foreign cause, and make American taxpayers run out and, pay for something that doesn't benefit us at all anyway. That's like the same thing Israel or Ukraine or any of these other countries are trying to do. Am I going to take my cultural roots and become an identity politics driven person, or am I an American that's going to stand for American values and say, hey, sucks what happened, but that's over there. Let's focus on the homelessness problem and let's give that money to veterans who deserve it, who fought for our country. It's not easy running into a war zone and getting shot at. Maybe, these people sacrificed a lot for us. Maybe let's give them the benefits that they deserve instead of sending money over to go pay for some foreign war, or instead of, oh, good job, thanks for fighting, you get nothing. Come here, 18-year-old. Now it's your turn. You go fight. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. And America first isn't a fascist, whatever. Nationalism's not a bad thing. America first simply means that we put America first and we put Americans first, and we, pay into a system that should benefit us.
Yeah. It's nationalism. Nationalism is key. I just look at it in a sense that, look at world history. If you're not a nation that has nationalism, your nation's going to fall apart. Where we've gone, and this is a testament to the media pulling us apart, but where we've gone, where we are not proud to be who we are not proud to be Americans, and we want to promote globalism and help out Somalia and help out all these countries, that need our help. They need our help. They need our help. Let's give our taxpayer dollars away and help out a country that's not going to help us in return. I fully respect everyone in every country, and I think that all the countries have a right to exist. Okay, baseline statement. America first means that we need to focus on America now. We need to focus on domestic issues. Isolationism is what George Washington always stood for. We should not be involved in even European affairs. We should not be involved in European affairs. We should not be involved in African affairs. We should not be involved in Asia. We should not be involved in all of this stuff. Having allies is different. That's a give and take. You need to make sure that your allies are people that will give you as much as you're giving them. That's something that is basic in day one of learning about politics. Allies, who are our allies? Who are our enemies? You know what I mean?
If we want to, have any sort of foreign aid, we should do it under the Monroe Doctrine and under what Teddy Roosevelt believed in. Teddy Roosevelt said, I forget the exact quote, keep calm and carry a big stick or something. If anything, we should align with our hemisphere and focus on the Americas, and pour our aid into here, so that any European, Asian, or African issues, they don't even want to come over here because we're a united bloc against their issues, and we have our own issues. So what is the purpose of traveling halfway around the world to get into a conflict that isn't going to have any effect on us when Venezuela is rigging our elections, or Brazil? The whole South American thing is divided. Let's be the global police force and the leadership and go into our own hemisphere and straighten things out so that we do have allies that are on our side of the world. It's all connected. There's a little, the Panama Canal breaks the connection, but it used to be connected. The whole we're one piece of land that should stick together. Instead, we want alliances halfway across the world, and we're going to ignore the Caribbean and the South American, Latin American regions and focus on, I don't know, Ukraine or whatever, these dumb conflicts.
Yeah.
European conflicts.
European affairs. Europe has been the grounds where war has happened the most in history. When you look at all of our history books, I mean, unless you're talking about the Chinese dynasty or Mongolia or I guess the Middle Eastern nations, it's all Europe. Europe is it's Greece, it's Rome. Obviously Rome spanned of 3 continents, but it roams Europe, Holy Roman Empire. It's England, it's the Great Britain, France, Spain, Portugal. It's all that, Iberia. So for us, I don't understand why we need to expand our national debt, which is an ever-growing problem that honestly, just looking at it from an outsider point of view, obviously it's not this easy. I mean, our military spending is ridiculous, but I like it, obviously. Maybe we could cut back a little bit. We have $1 trillion going to military spending a year, where second place is, 135 million. So to have that much money going into it, or 135 billion, sorry, that much money going into it is ridiculous. But I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I think foreign aid is a big problem. We need to cut off foreign aid spending. I think the American taxpayer dollars should actually go back into America and domestic issues. And why don't we go isolationist? That's what George Washington said. If we listen to George Washington, didn't create political parties, and I'm sure he would have assumed no special interests, people that are Americans that will fight for Americans. That's kind of the whole thing. No political parties, isolationism, don't get involved in anything, focus on America, the American dream, the manifest destiny. We pushed westward. We got all that. We got Hawaii, bought Alaska. That's the golden age. But where we're at right now, funding all of these wars, which I'm really worried about this Israel-Iran. I think that this is going to be the next big war. Like Ukraine-Russia could end. It could become a 20-year war. It could end. Israel-Iran is something that's heating up to be something really bad. And if anyone in this world that has a nuclear weapon would use it, I think Israel is a pretty good candidate. I mean, even Pakistan, India went to Trump and said, you need to fix this now. It was a 3-week argument. Obviously they have issues on their border all the time, but this was a 3-week thing where the Kashmir region almost blew up into World War III. And even they both have nuclear weapons and they didn't use them.
I might drop out here in a second. My camera's about to die, but I don't know if you want to close us out. I just wanted to say to everyone that this is my closing statement. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys look into what we talked about here, and I hope that we provided a lot of good perspective for people. And we could use just do this because we love this country. So we don't ask for money or anything, but we do ask that you follow, and share the video, because the only goal of this show is to spread our message, and people could help out with that, and that's really it. That's really our only thing. We're just two guys who love America, who want to keep promoting these ideas, and we'd like to just increase the number of people who can access and watch the show. So please share, and subscribe to the show. And I hope that you guys liked what we said. If you didn't, leave a comment. And I don't know.
No, I love it. I love exactly what you said. We're just Americans that want to show what our belief systems are, and show you guys that what's actually happening in this country. We need to turn and flip, because where the country is going, it's unrecognizable from 30 years ago. And if you think about that, 30 years from now, this country is going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. And the thing that scares me the most is if we separate from one nation under God, the 50 United States, to a nation separated in different states, disband, that could be really bad. We need to stay together, stay united, and we need to protect our life, liberty, and freedom. So I'm Richard Donahue, here with William Donahue. I hope you enjoyed episode 4. A good 2-hour episode for you guys. We got a lot of information out, a lot of stuff from 2025, 2026. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment, subscribe. And, we'll see you guys when more news happens. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And looking forward to tomorrow's America. Let's make it better for our children.